As we age, we often find ourselves re-evaluating what truly matters in life. For many, this includes the difficult question: should I keep seeking the company of others, or is it time to embrace solitude? In this video, we'll dive deep into why some seniors decide to prioritize time alone, and how this shift can lead to mental peace, personal growth, and emotional well-being. We'll explore real-life stories and personal insights that show how being alone isn't about loneliness, but rather about creating the space to reconnect with oneself. Why embracing solitude can be life-changing. As we age, society often expects us to remain engaged in social circles, community events, and family gatherings. We may feel that avoiding these engagements would lead to isolation or loneliness. But as the stories of several individuals reveal, choosing solitude can actually bring about profound personal growth, mental clarity, and joy. Solitude, especially in later years, offers a chance to shed the external noise and reconnect with our inner selves. Rediscovering mental peace. Through solitude, imagine a man who, for decades, thrived on social interaction. Mr. Harold, at 70, had always been the life of family gatherings and neighborhood events. He loved spending time with loved ones, believing that these social activities were essential for his happiness. However, as he got older, he began to feel overwhelmed. The constant demands of socializing, whether it was attending a family dinner or a community event, left him drained, even though he once enjoyed them. One particular evening at a family dinner, surrounded by lively conversation, Mr. Harold realized that he felt a deep sense of emptiness. It wasn't the company. It was the endless engagement with others that left him mentally exhausted. The realization came slowly, but eventually he understood that in order to restore his mental peace, he needed to spend more time alone. The first few steps were difficult. He felt guilty stepping away from traditions that had defined his life for years. But as he started taking quiet walks and spending time reading alone in his favorite chair, he began to feel an immense sense of relief. Without the constant pull of social demands, Mr. Harold was able to reflect and recharge. The mental fog lifted and a sense of calm began to take over. Sometimes avoiding people isn't a sign of rejection. It's a form of self-care. The constant demands of social engagement can be exhausting, and carving out time for solitude can help restore our emotional and mental balance. By reconnecting with our inner selves, we can better appreciate the time we do spend with others. Setting boundaries for a healthier life. At 72, Miss Gloria was known as the go-to person in her family. She loved hosting holiday dinners, organizing family events, and ensuring everyone felt included. However, as she grew older, she began to feel exhausted. The physical and emotional demands of constantly meeting others' expectations were taking a toll on her health. After a particularly draining weekend of hosting, Miss Gloria realized that something had to change. She couldn't continue at the same pace as before, and more importantly, she didn't have to. Slowly, she began to set boundaries with her family and friends. She started declining invitations when she needed rest and suggested smaller, less demanding alternatives. As Miss Gloria embraced these changes, her health improved. She felt more energized and less stressed. She discovered new hobbies like gardening and reading, which nourished her in ways socializing never could. By learning to prioritize her own needs, Miss Gloria found herself thriving once again. Setting boundaries is crucial as we age. Saying no doesn't mean we are being selfish. It means we are preserving our health and well-being. By learning to say no to unnecessary obligations, we make room for the things that truly nourish us, whether it's personal time, hobbies, or more meaningful interactions. The burden of superficial relationships. Grandpa Joe, at 75, had a large circle of acquaintances. His weekends were always filled with social events, community barbecues, casual meetups, and impromptu gatherings. For years, he believed that a rich social life equaled happiness. But over time, he began to feel that these relationships, while numerous, lacked depth. One evening, after attending yet another gathering, Grandpa Joe realized that despite being surrounded by people, he felt emptier than ever. The conversations were often shallow, revolving around the same trivial topics, and there was little room for meaningful emotional connections. This moment of realization marked a turning point in Grandpa Joe's life. He decided to step back and reassess the quality of his relationships. Gradually, he distanced himself from superficial connections and focused instead on a smaller group of close friends and family who truly understood him. He began to savor deep, meaningful conversations rather than filling his schedule with social obligations. This shift brought about a profound emotional transformation. Grandpa Joe found peace in these intimate, genuine relationships and in his newfound ability to enjoy solitude without feeling lonely. As we age, it's important to prioritize the quality of our relationships over their quantity. While socializing can be fun, focusing on deeper connections with people who truly understand us can lead to a more fulfilling, meaningful life. Sometimes, stepping away from shallow interactions allows us to embrace the solitude that nurtures us. Finding inner peace through quiet reflection. Mrs. Edith, 78, had always valued her personal space, but it wasn't until her later years that she fully embraced solitude. In her younger days, she frequently met friends for coffee and attended social events. However, over time, she began to feel emotionally drained by the constant socializing. After these interactions, she often found herself feeling mentally cluttered and disconnected from herself. At 78, Mrs. Edith decided to make a change. She began spending more time in nature, taking long walks by the lake near her home, where she could connect with her thoughts in silence. She also turned to activities like reading and meditation, which helped her quiet her mind and find balance. Initially, she felt guilty about turning down social invitations, but the more she immersed herself in solitude, the more she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Mrs. Edith now describes solitude as a form of nourishment, where she could heal, reflect, and grow. Her time alone wasn't about loneliness, it was about finding clarity and inner peace. Through these solitary moments, she was able to rediscover herself and cultivate a deep sense of contentment. Solitude can be a powerful tool for personal growth and rejuvenation, especially as we age. Taking time for self-care, whether through nature walks, reading, or meditation, offers a chance for reflection and inner peace. It's not about avoiding people, but about creating space to nurture our mental and emotional well-being. Prioritizing personal growth over social expectations. At 80, Old Fee had seen countless changes in his life. He had spent much of his younger years surrounded by friends and family, believing that happiness was rooted in constant social interaction. But as the years passed, he realized that these social obligations often distracted him from his true passions and personal growth. One evening, after attending yet another obligatory social gathering, Old Fee found himself exhausted and disillusioned. He felt that in his efforts to meet everyone's expectations, he had neglected the things that truly brought him joy, like reading and painting. This realization was the catalyst for change. He began to withdraw from some of the social gatherings he had previously attended out of obligation, choosing instead to spend more time nurturing his personal interests. Old Fee found immense satisfaction in his solitary pursuits. He began to explore new ideas, read more books, and even took up painting again. As he focused on his personal growth, he found that his life became richer and more fulfilling than it had been during his socially busy years. As we age, prioritizing personal growth and fulfillment can bring more happiness than adhering to social expectations. Solitude allows us the time and space to explore our passions, reflect on our lives, and grow in ways that socializing cannot provide. Before we dive into today's topic, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? Drop your country in the comments below, and let's start building a community where we can share, learn, and grow together. And hey, while you're at it, let us know what you'd like us to explore next. Whether it's physiological health, sexual psychology, sexual health, or even the experiences of older men or women in relationships. We're all about discussing the things that matter most to you, so don't be shy. Your input shapes our next video. Now let's get back to talking about how you can thrive well into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. The story of Grandpa Bob, the power of peaceful isolation. Grandpa Bob, at 73, had always been the quintessential family man. He was the pillar of his family, always present at birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. For decades, these events were the heart of his life, where his deep sense of duty and love for his family flourished. But after retirement, he began to feel a shift inside him. The hectic pace of work and family obligations was replaced by a quieter life, and something unexpected happened. Grandpa Bob started craving more time to focus on his personal passions. He realized that for the first time in years, he had the freedom to enjoy hobbies like woodworking, gardening, and reading, activities that had long been neglected. Initially, this shift was subtle. He started skipping a few family gatherings here and there, not because he didn't love his family, but because he realized that his soul needed time for itself. His family at first didn't understand. They thought he was isolating himself, becoming distant, and perhaps even lonely. But Grandpa Bob knew something they didn't. He knew that this solitude wasn't about abandoning them. It was about reconnecting with his inner self. He spent his afternoons in the peaceful solitude of his home, honing his skills as a woodworker, creating beautiful pieces with his hands. His garden, once neglected, became a sanctuary. As he planted flowers and vegetables, he found fulfillment in the quiet labor of cultivation. These solitary moments filled with purpose allowed him to reconnect with his passions and his own identity. The result was profound. The more time Grandpa Bob spent nurturing himself, the more he felt his mental and emotional health improving. He felt less stressed, more peaceful, and surprisingly, his relationships with his family improved too. No longer overwhelmed by constant social obligations, he found that he could engage more meaningfully with his loved ones when the time was right. By embracing solitude and focusing on his passions, Grandpa Bob wasn't isolating himself. He was rejuvenating his spirit. Grandpa Bob's experience teaches us that solitude, when embraced with intention, can be a powerful form of self-care. By stepping away from the demands of constant social engagement, we make room to reconnect with our inner selves. It's not about cutting people off. It's about creating the space we need to nourish our passions and grow in ways that the noise of the world doesn't allow. The story of Old Fee, prioritizing personal growth over social expectations. At 80, Old Fee had seen more than his fair share of life's changes. But one transformation stood out among the rest: his shift from seeking constant social companionship to prioritizing his own personal growth. In his younger years, Old Fee had been the life of the party. He was always surrounded by friends and family, believing that the key to happiness lay in socializing and meeting people. But as the years went by, he began to feel a subtle but undeniable shift. The constant social obligations, The need to be available for every gathering and event no longer brought him the fulfillment he had once imagined. The more time he spent with others, the less time he had to engage with his own interests and passions. Old Fee began to realize that in order to truly feel fulfilled, he needed to give himself permission to step back from the endless cycle of social gatherings. One particular evening, after another obligatory social event, Old Fee found himself feeling drained and disillusioned. Everyone around him seemed to be enjoying the company of others, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing touch with what really mattered to him. He had always loved reading and painting, but had neglected these passions in favor of socializing. The realization was a turning point. He had been fulfilling the expectations of others, but in doing so, he was depriving himself of the time and space needed to cultivate his own joy. So, Old Fee made a radical decision. He would no longer attend every gathering or keep up with every social invitation. Instead, he would devote himself to activities that brought him genuine joy. He started reading more, rediscovered the joy of painting, and took long walks, reflecting on his life. This shift was not about rejecting the people around him. It was about giving himself the space to grow and nurture his mind and soul. By embracing solitude, he felt richer, more content, and more connected to his true self. Old Fee's story reminds us that, as we age, it's important to prioritize our own growth and fulfillment over societal expectations. While socializing can certainly enrich our lives, dedicating time to our own passions and interests can be even more rewarding. The quiet time we spend with ourselves offers the opportunity to reconnect with what truly matters and find deeper fulfillment than any social obligation ever could. Finding inner peace. Through solitude. Mrs. Edith, at 78, had always valued her personal space, but it wasn't until her later years that she fully embraced solitude as a means of finding peace. In her younger days, she was more social, often meeting friends for coffee or attending community events. However, as time passed, she began to feel a growing sense of exhaustion after social interactions. She realized that the energy required to engage with others, especially in large groups, was no longer something she could sustain. It wasn't that she disliked the people around her. In fact, she loved her friends and family. But Mrs. Edith noticed that after socializing, she often felt mentally cluttered and emotionally drained. The noise of the world seemed to drown out her own thoughts, and she found herself longing for quiet moments of reflection. At 78, she made the decision to change her life. She started spending more time in nature, taking long walks by the lake near her home, where the stillness allowed her to reconnect with her own thoughts. She began to meditate, read, and embrace the simple pleasures of solitude. Although at first she felt guilty about turning down social invitations, the deeper she immersed herself in her solitary practices, the more she felt a profound sense of inner peace. Mrs. Edith now describes solitude not as loneliness, but as a nourishing space where she can heal, reflect, and grow. It's a sanctuary where she can be true to herself without the distractions of the outside world. Each morning she meditates, spends her afternoons reading, and enjoys quiet reflection. In solitude, she found the peace she had been searching for all her life. Mrs. Edith's story shows us that solitude, far from being a form of isolation, can be a powerful tool for personal growth and inner peace. It provides the space we need to reconnect with ourselves, reflect on our lives, and restore our emotional and mental balance. By embracing solitude, we give ourselves the opportunity to grow in ways that social interactions cannot provide. Embracing solitude for a richer, fuller life. The stories we've shared today highlight an important truth. embracing solitude in our later years isn't about rejecting others or becoming isolated. It's about making space for self-care, personal growth, and mental peace. As we age, we naturally find that our energy levels change, and the social obligations that once brought us joy may no longer be fulfilling. In these moments, embracing solitude allows us to reconnect with our passions, reflect on our lives, and cultivate the inner peace that's so often drowned out by the noise of the world. Whether it's finding solace in nature, rediscovering forgotten hobbies, or simply taking the time to reflect and grow, solitude can be a pathway to a richer, more fulfilling life. And, as we've seen in the stories of Mr. Harold, Mrs. Gloria, Grandpa Joe, Mrs. Edith and Old Fee, embracing solitude can lead to greater peace, emotional well-being and personal growth. If you're considering embracing more solitude in your own life, remember this. It's not about shutting yourself off from the world, but about creating the space you need to thrive. Taking time for yourself is one of the most powerful gifts you can give your mind, body, and soul. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, leave a comment below with your thoughts on solitude. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos that explore how we can live our best lives at any age. Until next time, take care and embrace the peace of your own company.